All right, on today's episode, we had Nathan Lind with Lines, Wyoming Lines, that is, and he is a steel detailer.
Correct.
Was there anything you wanted to say about that?
Well, he doesn't want to be called just a detailer. That's number one. That was important, and I can definitely respect that because we've all experienced that probably at some point in our lives. You're just an engineer. You're just an architect. But I think maybe he has some feelings about that. They come out, and he has a message, a strong message, I believe, in this episode of that ties to that somewhat, and also the importance of what steel detailers do, the importance of valuing that not as just a commodity, but as somebody who provides value to AEC industry. Yeah. We even talked about perhaps we should change this to the AECD podcast.
AEC and D.
Yeah. Well, maybe we should change it. What do you think?
Maybe, but if you get a new sign.
Yeah, we gotta get a new sign. We'll keep it as is for now, but.
Or we can just Sharpie in a little deal with it.
Yeah. So, did you have anything about the episode that?
I think you hit on the main points. I liked how you brought it back to the first episode where you said, building blocks or you building a cathedral, where it's like, I'm not just an engineer, just a steel designer.
Detail.
Yeah. I'm not just an architect or whatever it is. And I am looking at the big picture of what I am doing throughout this whole job and what I'm doing ultimately.
Yeah. Now we definitely get into it on this episode. We get down into the quote details of what a detailer does, what these aspects of it. We had another detailer on another episode. So, but this is a different angle. So I think you're going to get some value on it as well. So I would definitely keep listening. My name is Andy Richardson, and I'm a structural engineer. I've been doing this 27 years. This is Madeline, our producer, and this is the Enhanced Podcast. We interview professionals in the AEC industry and find out their what and their why. Let's get started.
Welcome to Enhance, an AEC podcast, where we learn the why behind AEC professionals so that you can learn your why.
All right, well, we're actually live. Nathan, we're going to go right into it.
Okay.
I like to keep it organic.
Good. No, that's good.
But welcome to the Enhanced Podcast.
Thank you for having me. Been looking forward to this for a long time.
Yeah, definitely. We met a few months ago, and quite an interesting post on LinkedIn is how we got introduced. You're a detailer, and you actually you're in Wyoming.
Yes.
And you actually have a itinerary for me today, which is awesome.
Right.
Thank you for putting that together. So since you took the time to put that together, I'm going to go ahead and follow that. The first order of business, it just shows how detail-oriented you are, right?
Right.
But the first order of business really is just give a background on yourself, if you could, today, okay. Nathan.
So I've been detailing since 1993. I think I'm in my 33rd year. I started on April 1st. I don't know if that was a portent of something to come, but April 1st of 93. I worked for an independent detailer for about 17 years. Then I worked for a fabricator for about 4, and my wife and I have been in business as our own independent for, I think we're in our 12th year now, so 30 some years. As we get into later in our discussion here, I think the one of the key strengths of a detailer is we work on everything. We often have the idea that if it rusts, we draw it. So, I've worked on projects literally around the world. Of course, most of my stuff's in the continental U.S., but we worked on projects in Canada and South America, Kuwait. We've used Asian steel, British steel, metric and standard and everything. So right now we tend to do primarily commercial work, but we've done industrial work, high-end residential work. We've done everything from 2 posts on a carport to 6,000 or 7,000 ton projects. Been involved with. So that's kind of gives you an idea where we're at. Like I say, we are located in Wyoming now, and the beautiful thing about this type of work, you can pretty much live anywhere. So.
You started in Colorado, now in Wyoming. So you've seen a lot of the country. I guess that's your favorite part of the country, should I assume, or?
Well, I grew up in Montana, and my wife and I met at Bible College in 89, 88, 89, right out of high school. She was from Canada, and we got married, moved back to Montana, and then we moved to Wyoming actually in 91, pursuing another job. And about the time our first child was born, I thought, boy, I need to figure out a career that's going to make some sense for me in my life. And the deacon in our church owned a steel detailing business, and he actually hired me. And I just feel like it was like a duck to water. It just fit me. All the interests I had and the skill set that God had given me, I just had, attention to detail, high math skill, conceptual, mechanical aptitude, all those kind of things. And I've been doing it ever since. So.
Now, was that what you were planning on doing?
Oh no, I
You
never
went
heard
into
of
Bible
steel
college?
detailing. No, I just went 1 year out of high school just to get a basic Bible education, and before I started my adult life. And yeah, actually, my wife and I went back to Bible college, same Bible college in '98 through 2002, and I got a Bachelor of Music and Worship to be a worship pastor, which I have done some part-time and continue to do as a volunteer. So
Okay.
at different levels throughout the years, but I've stayed detailing all these years. So
Do you still play a lot of music?
not as much as I used to, for sure. I'm not doing much of that right now. So
But still some active with the music
yeah,
somewhat
I
in
need
church.
to certainly get back into that for sure.
What's your instrument of choice?
I play mostly keyboard, piano, but I also do I got trumpet, cornet, flugelhorn kind of stuff, so brass.
Yeah.
I've tried to play guitar, but it's so much different than keyboard, and I grew up a keyboard player that conceptually guitar is, I don't know, I can do it, but I'm not very good at it.
Yeah, it's very. I mean, I think piano is technically, or the music theory in piano is probably more higher than guitar, but the fingering and things with guitar is just
Right.
physically challenging. I think that's what I've discovered anyway.
Yeah.
And obviously the different chords. So, thank you for sharing some of that background, Nathan. And so you've got a next item on our list here is just life of a detailer. You know, we get to have an inside look today, and this is the Enhanced podcast, an AEC podcast. So our audience is really anybody looking in on the AEC industry, but also people in the AEC industry, architects, engineers, contractors, people that are, I mean, my number one target audience honestly is architects, because that's one of the people that we do a lot of work for.
Mm.
But we want the audience to be general. But today we're getting an inside look at the detailing aspect of the AEC industry, which is significant. And you gave us a little bit of a glimpse in terms of steel is what we all think of. That's
Right.
what I think of, steel detailing. And some people may not even know what that is, by the way.
Right. Yeah.
So we did have another detailer on recently, but that being said, so basically give us a glimpse into what it's like to be a detailer. As you mentioned, it's not just steel, it's other aspects. What is it? And, so give us an idea what that's like. So life of a detailer 101.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting you say that. When I tell somebody I'm a steel detailer, they think I detail cars.
Yeah.
You have to explain it to them. So I usually say I'm a computerized draftsman. That kind of gets them a conceptual that they can grasp. So in 33 years, when I started, we had actually the company I worked for had a pencil plotter of all things. So all of our master drawings were done with the pencil plotter, and then when you scrub check prints or approval prints, you actually scrub them manually. So when I started, I learned lettering and line work and all of that stuff from the old time detailers and project managers at the company I worked for. So I really feel like I got in kind of a transition. Computers that we used SDS2 then as well, but SDS2 got us to the print, and then from there it was hand done. So And then, of course, from there, SDS2 is the steel detailing software that we use. Has really
I'm sorry,
cool.
can I just clarify something? So you said SDS2 gets you from print, and then from there it's hand. Can you clarify what that means?
There at the beginning when I started. So we used SDS2. It was basically a glorified 2D drawing program at that time. But as soon as we printed the master set, if you will, of a sheet, then it became hand operated from there on out.
Okay. So there's like a combination of the two,
Right.
basically. Okay.
So I got in just right at that transition point. And eventually, of course, we abandoned all the hand stuff and everything became prints and everything else. Yeah, I think that, just generally speaking of a steel detailer, we're going to get into this more as we discuss this. When I started, basically, we were translators, right? We translated drawings from people like yourself and the architect into shop drawings. So we took a two-dimensional structural drawing, translated into an erection drawing for the erector and a shop drawing for the fabricator. That was our job. 2D to 2D to 2D. Very straightforward. Certainly a level of skill there is required, but as time has progressed, I think it was about 98 that SDS2 started producing the three-dimensional model. And since that time, we have added so much more tasks to our list of things that we are required to do. So, now we are in charge not only of the model. The model is gospel because the 2D is always representation of the model. And now we have to produce all kinds of electronic files, CNC files, NC1 files, XML files, just all these new things, Fab Suite, Fab Pro, all these things that have come out through the years have required a different file format. So every single one of those operations now requires us to be detailed, and the expectation is 100% accuracy on everything. That is our mandate. So in my opinion, we are no longer just, as I'm going to talk about it in a minute, just a detailer, just a translator from 2D to 2D. We translate 2D back to 3D, back to 2D, as well as create all these other files. And then, as we talked about here in that conversation we had with the other engineers, I feel like a lot of our time is spent, I call it babysitting the design team, helping them finish their design because their design is incomplete or inaccurate. So all of these things have become part of what it is to be a steel detailer as far as our job description. So that kind of gives you an idea of where I think we are at with that. So
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see the transition that you've experienced, which, I mean, our careers are similar in terms of time frame, and the hand drawing, the 2D, the 3D, but then also it's almost like the more technology that comes out, it's almost like an inverse relationship between the accuracy and I mean, your accuracy of not necessarily what you're doing, but what you're seeing come to you. It sounds like people are depending more and more on what you do and less on the inputs of people like myself.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's what I'm seeing, some of the feedback from people like yourself. Do you feel like some of that accuracy is slipping from the design professionals?
For sure, yeah, very much so. And it's continually getting worse, in my opinion. I have my opinions about it. I think 3D modeling has actually caused design teams, probably detailers as well, to be lax about their management, their information management, quality control. Well, if the model spits it out, it must be right. Well, you got to manage your model right, and if you're going to produce a two-dimensional picture for others to use, whether it's a design drawing or a shop drawing, it has to be accurate. You can't just assume it's right. It's actually going back to what I was talking about, adding the model to our thing. So now we check the model, right? Model checking is where most of our checking is, as well as the 2D. So we're basically checking two worlds. We used to just check the 2D. That's all you check because that's all you had. Now we have to check the model and check the 2D, and really we should be checking all those files that I talked about, right? All those, we're responsible for all of that information to be accurate. So it's our responsibility to check it all. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know what the process is for architects and engineers, but it seems to be that there's there's less management of A, accuracy in your model 2D, and B, information input on your drawings. And so it makes just a lot more work on our part. It takes a lot more time to get to the finish line.
Is there something about the process that, or the organization of how these projects are organized, that's causing this, or is it? Do you see a common source of the problem, or is it a multifaceted?
From the design team perspective?
Well, I mean, this idea that we've lost accuracy on the front end, on the professional side. Do you feel like do you see any common threads where that's coming from?
I think so. Generally speaking, I think architects have always been more dependent on this idea of concept, right? The intent of their drawing. They talk about that a lot. They have always talked about that. Their drawings have always been, more conceptual. They're not as concerned on accuracy or completion, in my opinion. Engineers have always been, or up until recent years, concerned about accuracy. Close enough wasn't good enough, and engineers produced usually a solid product. But I think what's happened, just from my opinion, conversations with engineers like yourself, through the years, I think the engineers have developed that kind of concept. Well, the intent. All I need to worry about is the intent. And here's a connection. It shows the intent of the connection. Well, great. I don't know bolt size. I don't know dimensions to holes. I don't know steel grade. All that kind of stuff that needs to be on there. I think that even engineers are saying, well, I produced the intent, and I'm done basically. But you're not. The information is not there that you need to show. I mean, and it doesn't take very long. 5 minutes into a design set, when I bid it, I can say, they're not done, and they have some huge issues. First thing I look for when I bid a job: do grid lines dimensions match between architectural and structural? That's a huge red flag. If they're off, that indicates big problems down the road. If the grid lines can't even match between the two disciplines. But there's just simple things, just even getting out of the gate. So many times, even anchor bolts, and I think we talked about that last time in our conversation. Embedment's not shown. Grade of bolt is not shown. Diameter of holes in base plate is not shown. Dimensions to holes in base plate are not shown. Just all the basic 101 engineering things. And whether that's as a result of, I don't know your discipline, why that is. I think it has something to do with the modeling side, because in my opinion, when modeling started to become the thing, early 2000s, since then there's been a degradation of the design product. And that's the only thing that I can think of that has changed in the last 20, 30 years. And I don't know if it's because there's a reliance on the model now to be gospel, and there's not full connection with quality control in the model and then quality control on the 2D and the interface between the two in order to make that to make your product go to the next level. So,
I mean, one of the things I think I appreciate about what you're doing, because you've become somewhat vocal about these things, is this idea that maybe these particular professionals never had anybody say, by the way, where's the anchor bolt embedment?
Right.
Or, in other words, I think a lot of probably what you do is this idea of intent, right? You take it from an intent and you finish it, quote unquote. And so, because you can make a decision when you have this quote intent, you can say, you know what, I'm going to send it back and ask questions, aka RFIs, etc., request for information. Or you can take the intent and say, you know what, I'm going to do my best guess and run with it. So, I mean, is it fair to say that's basically your two options? I mean, you can either run with it the best you can, or you can send it back for questions. Is there any other options here?
Yeah, I guess so. And I don't know what other detailers do, but I tend to put the brakes on and say, start asking questions. You know,
Hmm.
I don't want to make. I can give suggestions. I can say, I think this is what you want, but I can't. I can't make that decision. That's not what I'm paid for. That's not my
Hmm.
job. That's the engineer and architect's job. So, and
Yeah.
I think too, this idea of intent. I never heard engineers talk about intent 10, 15 years ago, ever. There was never any conversation when we talked to them about intent. It was, the architects might talk about that, but the engineers never did. I kind of liken that if I was a detailer and I sent some shop drawings and I said, well, I meant to draw that beam as 19 foot 11 and 7/8, but I actually drew it as 5 foot 6 and 3/4. Whoops. That's kind of this idea of, in my mind, what intent is. Intent is fine. I don't need intent. I need accuracy. I need X, Y, Z. I need information that's right, not intent. So I think that's
Yeah.
part of it. That may be a mindset shift on the part of architects and engineers. I don't know. I just have noticed
Yeah.
the trend.
I mean, that's fair. So I think it is good that you're bringing it up because maybe, again, some of these professionals haven't heard it, that they didn't realize it was a problem, or
Right.
maybe nobody ever raised their hand and say, this is a problem. So in some ways, I would say that's good. So, um, and I think too, another aspect of it is this definition of intent, because there might be other situations where, I mean, is it possible that the engineer thinks, okay, that bolt diameter is inherent in the building code, you know, for a 3/4 inch bolt, for example, you have a standard hole size. Are things like that more prevalent now, or I mean, has that always been the case?
I don't think so. So just we'll talk about anchor bolts for a minute. So earlier years when I started, a standard 3/4 inch anchor bolt had a 1 1/16 diameter hole in the base plate. That was the standard size for field tolerances for base plate holes. And when whatever's LRFD or something came out years ago, that chart 14-2, I think it's called. Now they say you can go up to 1 5/16 for a 3/4 inch bolt. So I have two options when I get a set of design drawings and it's not indicated what bolt size they want. For anchor bolts holes, do I do the old standard or the new standard? The new standards also requires plate washers that are field welded to fill that gap. Sometimes they show plate washers, no field welds are shown, no holes are indicated. So it's little things like that. It's not and I get jobs that are both. I get the old style and the new style. So it's not on me to make that call. I don't know if the engineers don't realize there's an option there, but that's just one instance. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. Um, that we need to be educated about that, and um, and make sure that as professionals we know those different options as well.
Right.
So so let's go back to a little bit of a glimpse of a life of a detailer.
Yep.
Translating from 2D to 2D was, make sure we defined it very clearly, because the engineer would have drawn the beam. Ideally they would have a grid line clarified,
Right.
right?
Yep.
But they would have a beam drawn maybe 20 foot center to center of columns, and then your job is to that's the overall dimensions, but then
Right.
the guy in the shop needs to know how to cut that beam, right?
Right.
Bolts and things. Is that a fair? Basically, we
Mhm.
got to get it from the drawing to the
Right.
shop, and then from the shop to the field, and a
Right.
quote unquote erection drawing, which is like, you know, literally you take all these beams, they're marked on the plan, beam one, beam two, etc., and you go out in the field and you put it together like a Lego set.
Right. Right.
Is that a fair?
Hmm.
I mean, that's my thinking of it as a simple engineer, but trying to put two and two together for the listener a bit.
Yep. So basically, that's exactly right. So that's why I say we're a translator. It's like translating Spanish to English or English to Russian. We're taking a language of structural drawings or architectural drawings, in this case steel, and converting it to shop drawings for the steel fabricator and erection drawings for the erector. So it's
Yeah,
same language, but it's different information. So it's a
definitely.
process. It's a very linear process, and that's kind of something too that I feel like our industry has changed. It's no longer linear. I feel like the detailer has their fingers everywhere. We're back up the line helping architects, engineers design it. We're helping contractors figure out sequencing and shipping and staging steel. We're helping the fabricator with loads and all kind of, just on and on and on. We work with other trades. If we've got specialty things that we need to do, light gauge girts and purlins, all kinds of things that we are. It's no longer very linear. It's no longer a train. It's it's like a spider web, and I feel sometimes the detailer is at the center of that, controlling all that or helping all those pieces come together to get the final product to the finish line. So
Yeah, I mean you're and you're working for, I guess next question, independent. So does that mean that you're independent from the fabricator and the general contractor? You're an independent company basically?
Yep. So again, my first 17 years were working for an independent, and my last 12 have been working for myself as an independent. So
Okay. And you have a team? Is yourself and your wife, or you have a team additional to that?
right before COVID hit, we had 8 employees, counting ourselves, and since COVID has taken out the job market for us, so we've declined over the last 3 or 4 years till now it's just my wife and I.
Okay. And she helps with the detailing,
Yeah,
or?
she details and does document control, project management stuff as well. So we just kind of work. We have our niches and we just stay in our lanes and do our thing. So
Okay, so how does that work? Like you have your area of specialty, she has hers.
right.
Mind giving a little more information on that?
Well, like I say, we've got, and I think I showed you briefly that product last time we talked. Our Bluebeam Project and Studio. So she manages all of our 2D information that comes to us through design drawings, emails, all that kind of stuff, as well as detail a lot of the structural beams, columns, bracing, checks. She checks the model and certain things, and so we just kind of tag team back and forth.
So when Dick comes in, she works on this file, this Bluebeam file, and it helps you guys basically stay organized with the whole
Right,
project.
for
I mean,
sure.
that's a high level. We had a conversation about this not long ago, and that was my understanding of it. I mean, it seems like a great idea to just keep things organized. Bluebeam, some people may not even know that, is a PDF editor. I mean,
Right.
it's super powerful.
It is.
I mean, could you live without Bluebeam these days?
No, for sure. Could not.
So, I mean, kind of give us a little bit more insight. It seems like a great idea as far as if you could just share a little bit more about that, if you're willing
hmm
to give us a sense of how this works. This what do you call that project, that system?
Bluebeam Project, and it's 2 sides. Bluebeam Project, Bluebeam Studio. If you have a Bluebeam subscription, you have access to both of those. So
Okay.
we just leverage the Bluebeam Project side is basically a file management system. You can put any sort of file on there, store it, move it, delete, modify, open, save, all that kind of stuff. The Studio side is only for PDF, and it's for multi-users to work in live together and see everybody's markups and conversation all the time. So
Yeah.
we work those universes parallel with each other. They work in the system that we have.
So you've really integrated into this Bluebeam project area.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like instead of a Dropbox, it's basically a cloud management type system.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that one, so that's good. And the Studio we use more and more. I mean, it seems super helpful because, I mean, I can do a red line here, and
Right.
a drafter somewhere else can, pick up that red line,
Instantly. Yeah.
and I can say, okay, it's yellow, so it's done.
Right.
Which is our system of checks. Um, so you're independent, and your wife and yourself, work together, and then you work for fabricators, steel
Mhm.
fabricators, light gauge, other, I guess, reinforcement, rebar. So how do you like working for fabricators? Can you share a little bit more about that?
So as an independent, I work for several. I subcontract through fabricators, right? So they send me a job to bid. I bid the job for the steel detailing package, and they include that in their steel fabrication cost and submit that for bid. If awarded, then I'm basically not an employee of theirs, but I am certainly subcontracted to them as an independent. It's different than many fabricators have their own employees that are detailers on staff. they're part of their overhead, they consider them, and they do same thing. They're just not independent. They're making the same product specifically for that one fabricator. I may make products for 10 fabricators in an annual cycle. Just depends on the market. But so that's the other nice thing about independence, especially. We work literally around the United States, around the world, in any given point. So we see a broad spectrum of design methods and jobs, and we might be working on a car wash and a church and something for an oil refinery all on the same week, and we see all of that. It's the same process, but it certainly has a lot of variety to it.
Anything interesting going on lately? Any interesting projects that you've worked on lately?
Yeah, we just finished a school for here in Wyoming. It had a very unique footprint, a lot of looking at it, plan a lot of skewed grid lines, wings, and it was all hip and valley, so it was quite intense, but it was very well designed, one of the best I've seen in years. And then right now we're also doing another unique one. Actually, if you're familiar with Wyoming in Cheyenne, they have the Cheyenne Frontier Days. It's a big rodeo, and there's some stands, there's some seating areas over the bull riding pens, and they're tearing all that out and putting this big seating area for people to rent box seats and that kind of stuff. So again, very unique footprint, a lot of skewed stuff, big trusses, bent beams for theater, not theater seating, but stadium seating, that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's always something.
Yeah. What's the feather in your cap though for projects over the past?
We did a really unique church up in it was in Wisconsin, not in Oshkosh, but one of the towns right close there. Was I think it's about a 5,000 or 6,000 seat church, if I remember correctly. I don't think there was any 90-degree corners in the building. I remember finding one on an architectural plan that actually had a little 90-degree symbol, but everything else was radiused and skewed and sloped and had a big catwalk system. So that was quite an interesting one. We've done a bunch of. We used to work for Central Texas Ironworks. I don't know if you're familiar with them, out of Waco, Texas. They do a lot of big power plant stuff all around the world, and so those are some really interesting industrial projects too. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen the scale of it. It sounds
Right.
like would be what's interesting about that. So the church, the nuance and the intricate aspects of it, and then this is just the scale of it on the industrial side.
Right.
So yeah, the variety. Do you find the variety makes it more enjoyable, or
Oh yeah, for
would you
sure.
rather just crush out money jobs? Is what I call.
Yeah, I mean, you're certainly in it to make money. It's taken me a long time to figure that out, but yeah, I just enjoy figuring stuff out, kind of getting the product to the finish line. I sometimes don't enjoy the process, but I certainly enjoy the mental side of it. And
Yeah, you don't like dealing with these dang engineers, right?
yeah, and architects.
So yeah, thanks for sharing some of those projects. Sounds like some really cool projects you got going on. And then just talking about working for fabricators, any pros and cons of having an in-house versus an independent? I mean, you're probably biased on this, but nonetheless, what's your opinion?
So that's all job security, I think, is the biggest one. So if you're working for a fabricator, you're part of their staff, you're an employee of them, you have job security. You're going to get paid. You're going to get a paycheck. You're going to probably get benefits, right? You're going to get medical and retirement and all those kind of fun things. Vacation. As an independent, you often don't, right? Because you're so the money income for an independent or for a steel detailer in general is not as large as other disciplines, and to take a week off is a huge undertaking because you've got people depending on you for approvals coming back. I need those in the shop, all of these kind of things. So yeah, I kind of listed some of the things I talked about, as far as pay scales, benefits, and those are all part of that. I think the thing I've noticed working as an independent for fabricators is there's two pitfalls in that relationship that often happen. Either the fabricator decides to hire their own in-house detailers, or maybe go overseas, That's one pitfall, and then if you built a relationship over 3 or 4 years, and they don't need you anymore. Or the other thing is, if the relationship goes sour, maybe you make a mistake on a job, or maybe you're trying to get paid on a job as a detailer, and fabricators got the money, or they're waiting to get paid as well, but they can't pay you or whatever, and your relationship with them sours, then that could be a big potential pitfall in your money source, your income, which is probably the same as what engineers deal with. I'm sure very similar issue.
Yeah, I mean, except you don't really see engineers working in-house too much
Right.
unless it's like an architectural company, like
Right.
an AE type company. Um, Obviously, you have fabricators and uh, detailing companies both have engineers of record on staff doing the
Right.
connection designs, or some of these jobs that get big enough, they require as you know, the shop drawings have to be sealed and the connection designs have to be sealed. And
Right.
that's a whole nother ball of wax, right? The delegated
Sure.
design piece, right? Which I think you probably get involved in that because this ties into what you do, right? The connection is an integral part of how that beam is drawn, or whatever, columned beam, etc., how it's drawn and the end of it, the condition of it. So you got to wait on those connection designs before you can draw that beam, right?
Right. Yep.
Um,
100%.
how does that impact your work, I guess?
Well, I think deferred design is another swear word right up there with intent, as far as I'm concerned. I don't. I exclude deferred design. Obviously, I used to manage that, pay for the deferred design engineer stuff. I don't anymore. Fabricator. That's on the fabricator if they want to do that. It's interesting. The word deferred actually has a couple of meanings. Deferred can mean to, give it to somebody else. Somebody else does the task or whatever. It can also mean delayed, and I think both of those happen when there is deferred design. It's a time delay. Every deferred design job I've had, whether it's stairs or connections, it always takes longer than if it had just been designed in the first place. And passing the buck is a bad thing, because if you have an idea as an engineer what you want connections to be, you defer it to somebody else. Well, they may have a different idea. You have to approve it as the engineer of record. And anyway, there's this back and forth. So it's a lot of work, and I always put a lot more money if there's deferred design, and I exclude any deferred design, costs. Those are not on me. I'm not gonna bear that burden anymore. So.
Which, I mean, it might sound crazy depending on who's listening to this. It might sound crazy that, for example, the engineering would not include, quote, the quote, connection design
Right.
in that, which it actually still sounds a little bit crazy to me, to be
It
honest
does.
with you.
Very
But I
crazy.
know, but it happens, and there's some engineers that do that. I mean, and that's what they do, right? And I think there is some cases for it, in certain jobs, certain scenarios. But I guess, it sounds like you're on the fence you're on the belief that it's not really that helpful or that needed.
It just takes. I mean, I've got a job right now, and we did anchor bolt plans a year ago, submitted for fab and field. The steel's actually up in the air. It's deferred design for stairs, and we're still fighting stairs and rail. I mean, the jobs, they want the stairs in because they want to enclose the job site before winter hits, but we're still fiddle farting around with stairs. It took us 6 months to get a deferred design engineer on board to figure that, figure the connection information to attach to the structural steel. It just seems like a waste of time. And in my opinion, I don't know the whole history of deferred design, but I think it's actually back in the day, fabricators were preferred like clip angle connections or shear tab connections, and they had all these standard connection material that they built by the train load, and so they wanted to, if the design drawings came through a shear tab, they said, well, we want to do shear tabs, or we want to do clip angles. And I think engineers got to say, well, that's fine. I'll defer that connection design to you if you want to redesign the connections. And I think that's where that came from.
Yeah.
And
I think it came, part of it. And then people realize, well, shoot, I mean, if they're going to just defer it, then why did I spend all, and I've had that happen to me not long ago, actually, on a light gauge job. but my feeling is, I'm of the belief, especially on these small jobs, 10,000 square foot retail, building, or even like a residential. I mean, I'm not going to put delegated design on there, because it's like 3 beams, or maybe if it's a retail thing, it's got 20 beams or something, and some joists. But why put the contractor and fabricator through that effort? That's my feeling. But then on this, it was this project, and we went through the process of designing all the light gauge. The contractor said, well, we have some value engineering ideas we want to go through, and so they had their own engineer do it. And I'm thinking, man, that sure would have been nice to know that, because we spent hours going through these drawing it, designing it, calculating it. So that's the counterpoint to that, I guess, is in next time. But then again, what's interesting about it is, from a design professional standpoint, here's the side of the coin maybe that you don't always see, but from a design professional standpoint, if I draw clip angles, I know for sure they're not going to build clip angles on that job. They're going to go with shear tabs. And if I show shear tabs, I know for sure they're not going to use shear tabs. They're going to use clip angles. I mean, it doesn't matter. And so the only real way to know is to really find out who the contractor is, who the fabricator is, and I don't always know that. So those are some of the challenges we deal with on a design professional standpoint. I think there's definitely some lack of collaboration in this field, and that's why I was curious if you had any insights or any thoughts on that, as far as what can we do to help improve that collaboration. But I don't know if you have any ideas.
Well, I've seen engineers put page after page of connection information. So one page will be all shear tabs, the next page will be all clip angles, the next page will be end plates. They just put them on all their jobs. So if you pick one, you pick your connection preference, and here's a whole drawing, tells you all the specs that we want you to use if you're going to use XYZ connection. So that's one solution. From a fabrication side of it, I think fabricators have gone away from their standards, at least the ones I work with here in the West primarily. I don't know what they're like in the South, maybe where you're from. They don't care. Everybody's got CNC machines. They've got plate burners. You draw what the design drawings show, and we'll build the connection material, or we'll farm it out. We no longer have a whole train load of clip angles, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 row clip angles back in the corner that we want to use. We'll just order the stock that the job specs, and we'll cut the plates that the job calls for. If it's shear tab, great. If it's clip angle, great. We'll just do it. And I think there's fabricators are just moving away from that, at least the ones I work with. I don't know if that's true all across the U.S., but I would prefer that. So that
seems reasonable to me. I mean, it seems like more of a lean approach. You know, you build what is drawn. I mean, unless there's some kind of early collaboration where we can talk and say, hey, would it make, and I have had that opportunity. It does help a lot if I can talk to the fabricator or contractor and say, hey, what do you guys recommend? I mean, let's sit down and go over this, and even the detail, or hey, what would make sense here? And it seems like that kind of collaboration would be amazing if we could do that.
Yeah, and I find that I've become more vocal about that. Just for instance, the last couple of jobs, as you know, sometimes anchor bolts, gusset plates, or not anchor bolts, base plates, gusset plates are spec'd as A5-7250, whereas standard plates are A36, or drag beam connections are A5-7250. You might have 4 or 5 scenarios on a project that are a different steel grade for plate material. Well, that's great as long as the steel detailer catches all that and details that correctly. And I'm finding now that I say, hey, at the beginning of the job, we got all these plates, they're A5-7250, all these are A36. Can we just streamline, make them all 5-7250? Can we just make that the standard on this job? A5-7250 satisfies the requirements for both levels, and it will guarantee that I don't make a problem or make a mistake here somewhere along the line, and make an A36 plate that should be A5-7250. So I think I've become a lot more proactive at the beginning of jobs on those kind of things. Where can we streamline? How can we make this better? Bolt size, bolt types, all that kind of stuff. So So
Yeah, I think that definitely helps to have that type of communication.
right.
So you mentioned about on here also on our list here to go over is overseas detailer or crossover detailing. Can you talk about that?
I think it was the 90s or so. We started to see competition by people in particularly India for doing steel detailing. And obviously, as the internet became more prevalent worldwide, this became an option for fabricators to use what we call overseas detailers. Now, there's overseas detailers, South America, Africa, Philippines, East or India. Those kind of seem to be the bigger points. It's kind of interesting. I was doing a little bit of research preparing for this podcast, and I Googled how many steel detailers are there in the United States. And Google AI, for whatever it's worth, said there are 7,000 steel detailers listed on LinkedIn. Now, steel detailers are not licensed like an engineer. So I asked how many engineers are in the U.S., and it said right under 60,000. How many architects? 116,000. So the disparity in number is huge. And I would say of those 7,000 LinkedIn detailers, I bet 5,000 are overseas. European, East Indian, South American, whatever. I bet, I pretty much know all the American steel detailers on LinkedIn. And it's just interesting to me. I was thinking about this. If you had if you were to interview 10,000 high school students that were graduating from high school, and ask them how many were going to be an engineer, what would that number be out of 10,000? Would it be 100? I don't know. It would be, considerable sum. And if you ask that same 10,000 how many were going to be a steel detailer, I bet it would be a zero. It would probably be negative, because if any of those 10,000 students had a parent that was a steel detailer, they would say, there's no way I'm going to be a steel detailer. And it's interesting to me, and just in the professions of architects, engineers, steel detailers, just that disparity in volume of people that do it, and more of the steel detailing profession is leaving our shores and is being done overseas. Those people can work cheaper, and what I mean by crossover detailing, often those steel detailers are managed by American fronts, people that have 2 or 3 people in the U.S. that manage the people overseas and manage the project management and whatnot on the American side. So that's a real concern, and I can't compete. I
So
can't.
what's the concern? I mean, in your opinion, like, what's the basis of the concern? Just it's taking money from the U.S. or taking jobs from the U.S., or is there a quality concern? What is your primary issue?
For sure, at the beginning there was a huge quality concern, but I think now this has been 30 years, 25 years that this has been going on. So there has been, I think, a level up of quality. Fabricators that use overseas detailers, I think, are telling me that some are good and some are not so good. Not that all American steel detailers are good. It's probably the same disparity. Certainly the cost, a steel detailing company overseas can work for a third or a quarter of what I can work for, and make money. They probably make a good income for themselves. I think the biggest issue, the 3 biggest issues I see are language barrier. Even though they speak English, they're not necessarily speaking American English. They have their own native tongues that they speak, and there is a little that causes some issues. I think the time barriers can be an issue. A lot of them are working in the night. That's their day. And if a fabricator has an issue during the daytime when they need an answer, who are they going to call? Nobody's available overseas. But I think the biggest issue is just problem solving. I don't think people overseas problem solve like Americans do. I think they just say, kind of going back to what you'd asked before, what I've seen with overseas detailers, if there's no dimensions, they'll just scale it. They don't even ask, just scale it and go, And I don't know if is that. I'll scale, but I'll also ask. I'll make sure that is correct. I won't just assume that my scale dimension is correct. And that's just one instance. And I could be off base there, but I think those are certainly concerns that I see.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned about the scaling. Like I used to, I mean, we do have worked with, overseas drafters and
Mhm.
designers. And I have noticed, I don't know, the cultural aspects of it maybe or what,
Right.
but it seems like there's a sense that um, sometimes a drafter overseas might and I don't want to over group this, right, because obviously we have the same, no matter, I mean, they're people are people, but I do think there's some cultural aspects of it, but maybe or maybe it's the time zone, but the idea, the feeling is that I need to get it back to you. I don't
Right.
I don't know. I'm trying to be careful about my words, right? But
Right.
I don't always know if it's just right or wrong, but I just got to get you something. I got to
Right.
get it over the fence. Um, I feel that sometimes. And I feel that here. I feel that with engineers and drafters here.
Right.
I think that's a problem.
Right.
I used to think it was a good thing because I could say, oh, well, I got something, and now I think, well, yeah, you got something, but it's wrong.
Right.
So that doesn't really help me. And I got to mark it up. That takes me time,
Right.
and that's, I'd rather get the right thing the first time. And
Right. For sure.
so anyway, um, that's my theory. But and I mean, I guess for you though, um, why would somebody hire somebody from Montana or Wyoming? Sorry, why
You
would
know,
somebody hire somebody from Wyoming right now?
yeah, it's kind of interesting. I just thought about this a lot. We've tried to sell our business a couple of times, and so so if you think if steel detailing had stayed in the U.S. 100% and steel detailers were making, competing only against each other, um, potentially there would be colleges or universities out there that offer a steel detailing program and a degree similar to an engineering degree. But to my knowledge, there's not really anything like that in the United States. I know there was some that used to teach steel detailing from a drafting perspective, but not really the art and skill of steel detailing. But because now that we don't have, we're competing overseas for price, and we're going to get beat out every time unless we're okay working for pennies. We just the whole profession has so many dings against it from a monetary perspective that it's just and I don't see it improving. I think that from what I'm understanding, more and more steel detailing is going overseas, and pretty much at some point, 90% of it's going to be over there. So what do I bring as somebody from Wyoming? Well, I think what I've come up with myself is that I have 30 years of steel detailing, a portfolio that is absolutely amazing all around the world, and I bring. I cost more money for sure, probably 3 or 4 times what you can get for an overseas, but I think I'm going to project manage it better. I think you're going to get a better product initially, and potentially, even at the end, the product that I produce will be better than maybe somebody else who doesn't understand the culture here and the process of project management and problem solving. So that's the way I'm approaching it, and it seems to be working. Seem to be getting more of these jobs that are a little more high profile jobs that are more intricate, more complex. They're sending them my way. So sounds good in theory. Let's see if it continues in practice. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if you got a job you need done right, if you got a job that's tricky,
Right.
call Nathan.
Right. Exactly.
That's what I'm hearing, right?
Yeah, I'm getting engineers now that are requesting that shoot 9 I was telling you about over the Cheyenne Frontier Days. They've actually requested that we detail the job. So they told the contractor we want Wyoming lines to detail this job. So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
Now, what's the name of the business?
Wyoming lines.
Lines. Okay. Because how did you come up with that name, by the way? I'm curious.
Well, my last name is Lind, Lind, and I draw lines for a living, so I just combine them. Wyoming lines.
Okay.
And I'm from
Wyoming
Wyoming.
lines.
Yeah.
I thought it was a minute. Maybe I spelled it wrong.
No,
But so that's a creative. I like creative things.
yeah,
See, there, detailers can be creative,
they can
right?
be. Yeah. Yeah.
And do you ever find that you have to have an outlet outside of the day job, so to speak?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I mean, certainly hobbies are good. Right now, I'm just started a physical fitness program online, hired a coach, and it's been good. But mostly, I've just been walking. It's just been a great, just going for an hour walk. Just helps clear the mind and helps me sort through problems and de-stress and yeah, whatever it takes to do to get yourself to de-stress, it's good. So
Yeah. So just want to give you an opportunity. I know we have a few more bullets here, but I don't know if we'll get through every single one of them.
Right.
Are there any on here maybe that you might want to emphasize that I didn't hit on already?
Well, I have a story to tell that I think will kind of encapsulate where I'm at. And it was kind of a bit of the conversation we had with you and some of those other engineers the other day. I think that there is an idea that detailers are, it's maybe not a conscious idea, but a subconscious idea that kind of less valuable, less needed in this industry. And we talk about the AEC industry, architects, engineers, contractors. I believe that's what AE stands for, AEC. Why are detailers? Why is not AEDC? Why are detailers not viewed as a profession right beside architects and engineers? In my mind, we're professionals. We may not have to go to school for this, like you guys do. But the story I was going to tell, years ago, we did a lot of detailing for the Yellowstone Club up in Big Sky, Montana. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's a place where those multi-million-dollar homes are built. Some of those homes have 20 tons of steel. Some would have 150 tons of steel. Just huge mansions, custom homes, very, very intricate, high-end, multi-million-dollar homes. And we had done several of them, and we always had issues kind of getting out of the starting gate. So I told our fabricator, the next one we do, let's have a kickoff meeting with the architect and engineer before we get started, so we can maybe circumvent some of the issues that we always run into. So that's a great idea. So starting a new one, we drove to Bozeman, Montana, to the architect's office, and in preparation for our meeting, I had taken the design set in Bluebeam and bookmarked everything. Everything was bookmarked, color-coded, hyperlinked. Took it on our laptop, and we got there early, and we plugged into the presentation room's TV, and we were waiting there. And I brought two other guys from our business. Engineers came in, a couple, kind of clean-cut guys, blue-collar-looking guys come in, and they have the design set printed in 11 by 17 with a clip on the end. They come in and set that on the table and start talking. We're supposed to start at 1 o'clock or whatever. Well, about 15 minutes after the start time, the architect comes in, and we always laugh at the architect. So they always have the architect haircut we talk about. They're all fancy clothes, fancy hair. He comes in, and he's packing a 36 by 48 set of design drawings, and boom, sets them on the table. And we've talked a lot about that situation after that meeting. In my opinion, the detailer was the most prepared person in that room. As we got to talking and going through things, we were flying through the design set, showing, well, this is a problem, this is a problem. And engineers quit looking at their 11 by 17. They just watched on the screen as we were talking through it, making notes, blah, blah, blah. And the architect kind of sat over there with his arms crossed, with a grumpy look on his face, like he didn't even want to be there in that room with that meeting. And we asked him a few questions, and he'd turn back those big drawings to find the thing, even though it was shown on the screen. But I think that the reason I bring that story up is I think there is a lot to be learned from the detailer, the steel detailer, as an architect and engineer. I think we have a lot to tell you, to show you in your product and help you make your product better. And whether that's in situations like this, or whether, I think we talked about, maybe as I hire as a consultant for an engineering firm, let me look through your design drawings, let me help you make a better product. But there's kind of this idea of, I'm not a steel detailer, I'm just a steel detailer. And I've heard that over and over again, just a steel detailer. And it's kind of this idea that we're expendable. I had one engineer say detailing is a commodity, like grain or corn or something. get the cheapest price because it's all the same. Well, it's not actually all the same. But as in this stage of my career, in my life, I would love to give back to the steel detailing community by talking to people like you and helping you produce a better product so that it would make everybody's life easier and everybody's life better. And how that looks, I don't know. Is this the initiation into that, the start of that? I'm kind of hoping so. I'm kind of hoping there's people that listen to this podcast and say, Nathan has something to say. Nathan has something good to say that I need to listen to. And that will help me in my business as a steel detailer. Not just a detailer, but as a professional, just like a structural engineer or an architect. And I might not have the haircut. I certainly don't have the haircut of an architect, but I have a lot of wisdom, and steel detailers bring such a multidiscipline, multi-geographical perspective to the AEC world that I think it would behoove the AEC professionals to listen to us and to actually not just hear us, but actually take heed and act on it. So yeah, that's kind of what I've hoped that happens as a result of this podcast. That's what I want to do more of moving forward, as well as detailing. So
yeah, I mean, I think that first of all, it's not a good to hear that you were treated in that fashion. So it's a good lesson learned for everybody that really this is just treating people with respect, in my opinion, is part of it. I mean, no matter what you are, you're not just anything. I mean, you're somebody who is valued by God, by our Creator, and first of all, that's everybody, right? Whether you're on the job site, building this building, and erecting the steel, you're not just a welder either, right? You're the guy who, I mean, you're the one that makes it work. And you're not just a detailer, you're the guy who, I mean, if you didn't have those drawings, it reminds me of the very first episode. Are you stacking bricks or are you building a cathedral? And so I'm hat tip to our first episode, / shameless plug, but it's this idea that, every line you draw, every line I draw, the architect, we're all doing something that's valuable. I mean, that's really what I find interesting about this show and what we're doing is we're doing something important, like the church that you designed, and with all these intricate details and angles, and the industrial project you did. I mean, we can't get the oil or the coal or whatever it is that we need to run our economy. I mean, these are important things. So I guess I'm fast forwarding a little bit. Well, obviously, before I do that, because I like to really get into your why, but before I do that, I just want to say, I mean, obviously, hopefully you've come across architects, engineers, and contractors that have respected you over the years and have valued you, and hopefully that was more of an anecdote, albeit a very important lesson learned for me to make sure I'm always remembering detailers, anybody that's involved in the project, but because I'm pretty sure I've got some people in the AEC industry, and maybe after this show today, we'll call it the AECD podcast. But we'll see. But Nathan, if we could, let's fast forward to your why. I mean, I sort of alluded to what part of my why is, but what is your why? I mean, why keep doing this? Is there a bigger reason why we detail buildings, or is it just putting lines on a page for you?
I think if you talk to me at different stages of my career, you'd get a different answer. I think at this point in my life, my why is to make money. Actually, I'm 55 years old, and I probably have another 10, 15 years of doing this, and I want to make the most that I can enjoy the rest of my life making money. My prices have doubled and tripled in some instances over the last 10 years just because of the amount of time required to get it, and we're very, very efficient. We're power users with S2-16 and Bluebeam, and we leverage that to get it done as quickly but still efficiently. And then the why, another why would be, as I described earlier, can I speak into the industry as a detailer. I would like that to be a why. I certainly have a yearning to do that, and even offering my time freely or at a reasonable cost. But to get my foot in the door, it seems almost impossible to get into an architectural engineering firm and do a critique of their methods and their product. Again, I think it's because I'm just a detailer. I'm not an engineer. If I was an engineer, going back to what I was talking about, trying to sell our business, we tried to sell it, and if we'd have been an engineering firm, I think we would have got it done. But because we were a steel detailing firm, we hardly got any money offered to us, and it was like, well, we could use you here, but not big real time commitment, and it's just all part of that package. So yeah, not any big grandiose why. 10 years ago there would have been a different why. I was certainly, when we started our business, I was wanting to do great things for the steel detailing industry. Just not there right now, I guess. So
Yeah, it sounds like you've been through some things.
yes,
Is one way to put it, right?
for sure.
You've been through some things. That anecdote that you gave is an example. It sounds like, right?
Right.
Of that. So, I mean, I like that you have a vision to improve. I mean, this is a follow-up to our conversation
Right.
today. I mean, that you have I think you have a message that's helpful and important. And so that's why I wanted to give you an opportunity to share that message today.
I appreciate it.
We got down into the details today
Yep.
of detailing.
Right.
And not everybody is involved in structural steel. You do other aspects, but I think the lesson learned is applicable, at least for me. There's some lessons learned that apply to all aspects of the AEC industry,
Right.
in my opinion. So thanks for sharing that, Nathan.
Yep.
Was there anything else? We had a few bullets maybe we missed, but just for time's sake, was there any other bullets that maybe we should hit on before we?
I don't think so. I don't want to get into the whole thing about where I could see improvements on the design side or anything. That's a whole nother couple-hour conversation. So I think this gives your listeners a good understanding of what the steel detailer does, and who we are as people, and what the profession is. What are the strengths and weaknesses of our profession, as well as the hurt points, the pain points that we have. And yeah, I think a lot of people are going to come into this, listening to this, like, what's a steel detailer? Never even heard of it, and now after listening, they should have a pretty good idea of what that is.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think that there's other ways that we can continue to extend this message out. I mean, one, personally, for me, I mean, I definitely want to have you help us out with some of that drawing review, and then 29E6 University is something that we do, so we can discuss that more, and we may be airing that here on the pod or separately, but that's more technical, and we have had a technical bonus here on this before, but we'll lay that aside for the time being.
Okay.
But Nathan, how could people find you if they wanted to reach out for detailing or just to connect with you?
Yeah, just our website, wyominglines.com. I think my contact information is on there. Email, phone number. Our website's a little outdated, but kind of gives you an idea of what we are.
Well, you're a business owner, so you're, Wyoming Lines, WyomingLinz.com. So
Yep.
WyomingLinz.com. Obviously LinkedIn. So everybody go check out Nathan. He often has some rants about the AEC industry. So check it out.
Right.
Nathan, it was a pleasure to have you on today.
Likewise.
Hey everybody,